Hello, everyone. It's October, and time just, even though it's moved relatively slowly from the standpoint of us dealing with the COVID situation, it still moves on, and it moves on for all of us. It moves on for our state, and today we're having this briefing today because we want to announce our revenue numbers, and while we welcome the media to ask any question that they choose to ask in our COVID briefings, it just seems more appropriate that we do this separately. I do want to say that that over these days, weeks, and months, all of us in West Virginia, every single last one of us is dealing with this terrible virus, and we're dealing with all the impacts of it in every way, and especially from the standpoint of losing great West Virginians. We've now lost an additional 4 since yesterday, which puts us at 354 deaths. Our cumulative positivity rating is at 2.77, and while we're so much ahead in every way of other states, it's still 354 great West Virginians that we've lost. And, in our briefing, we could sit and say, our positivity rating for our daily positivity rating is really, really low today. It's at 2.67. And all that's great and everything. But as we deal with the catastrophe of losing loved ones, we've also are dealing with an absolute mega stress issue as far as how do we deal with the economics? How do we deal with people that have been laid off to no fault of their own? How do we deal with getting them their unemployment checks and getting and the state stepping up and getting them the extra 25% of that unemployment check or the bonus part of it? And so how do we deal with all that? How do we deal with people that need to make house payments or rent payments or car payments or whatever, or pay the electricity bill? How do we deal with a state that has to continue to move forward from an economic standpoint? And so there's many hoops you got to jump through, and while we absolutely want to be there and make the right moves from the standpoint of sickness or the medical moves to be able to reduce deaths or to reduce the possibility of additional deaths, while that is the number one thing, from going back to school and going back to school safely, and our kids and our teachers and our service personnel all being protected as best that we possibly can do it. In addition to that, like it or not like it, a big part of my job is to make sure that the economics of the state continue to move forward. Now, I've been surrounded and I've been very blessed to have with me, a revenue department that is outstanding, to say the very least. I'm a numbers guy. I love the numbers. I'm a business guy, and I have always really been intrigued by the numbers. And so we meet, gracious sakes, there'll be weeks and weeks that we meet every day. But we meet so much, and I hope I don't drive them completely crazy about it, because I want to know. But they are so good at their jobs, whether it be, Mike Cook or Mark Mukow or Dave Hardy or on, or all the staff that's underneath them and that's supplying them with numbers. They are so good, and so I am so blessed to have them. And so with that, though, we have pushed the right buttons. So today, I'm going to report to you that September has now ended with a $10 million surplus. That puts us for the year at a $90.4 million surplus that's above our estimates. That's 12.5% or 12.8% above last year. You know, in addition to that, you know, we now have two, and I want to make sure that I'm correct in this, but two all-time records, all-time records in West Virginia for the first quarter of the year. The personal income tax, all-time record, but the indicator that I love to watch so closely is the consumer sales tax. And our consumer sales tax were an all-time record, absolutely all-time for the state of West Virginia in the first quarter. You know, in addition to that, and we've kind of set this aside, but in addition to that, we have a general revenue cash flow. A general revenue, our cash flow is $297.8 million that we have as an excess cash flow and that is the very best, in addition to these all-time records, that is the very best that it has been since 2009. So I can't say enough about the fact that we put in a lot of licks, and West Virginia, you continue to surprise the world, and we have just now finished a record beyond belief first quarter of the year. So we're $90.4 million, you know, ahead of budget for the first quarter in the year. We're $297.8 million of cash flow, of excess cash dollars that we have. That compares to last September when we did not have a COVID situation. Imagine this, just imagine it. It compared, that $297.8 million compares to last September when we had no COVID epidemic at all. Last September, we were at $120.1 million for the quarter, and this year we're at $297.8 million. So, you know, I just can't say enough about how much good work all of our businesses, large and small alike, all the great work that all the people are doing every day, all across West Virginia. You know, the reason we're a little late starting here today is just simply one thing. I'm sitting out there in Kanawha City on the interstate and not even moving because they're painting lines on the roads because of all the road work we're doing. Now, there may be a lot of people that are out there that are not happy with sitting there, but I love it. I love it to death. I love seeing the orange cones. I love seeing all the people that are out there working. I love to see, you know, the broadband and the internet access and everything that's going down the turnpike. Today, I am going to announce, you know, the opening of a 10-mile stretch of the Coalfield Expressway that, in all honesty, has had nothing that has really gone on there forever almost. It has been in the works for 30 blooming years. But today, for the first time ever in our history, Wyoming County is going to have a 4-lane highway in it. You know, for the first time ever, a 4-lane highway is coming to Wyoming County in West Virginia. So there's so much good that's going on. We still want to be so compassionate for all those that we've lost and everything else. This COVID stuff has been really tough. And all the stuff, you know, from going back to school to playing ball to any and every aspect of it, it's really, really tough. But this is great news, West Virginia, and what a day. So I'm going to defer now to our Secretary of Revenue, a guy that's a great friend and doing a great job, Dave Hardy. And Dave, you can take it from there, sir.
Thank you, Governor. I'll expand a little bit on the some of the information that you provided. As you pointed out, we had a great September. We're always happy when we come in above budget, and we came in on our revenue collections $10 million above budget, which means for the year, after the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year, we're $90.4 million above budget. But that's not the whole story here today. We often say in the Revenue Department that we get 4 major grade cards a year, and the 4 major grade cards come at the end of each quarter of the calendar. In other words, we're in the first quarter of fiscal year 21, and 90 days is a very good time to take a look at your numbers and try to get a feel for how we're doing, not just in the month, because the months can vary but due to cyclical things, but the quarters are generally a much better estimate of how we're doing than the months. And we are very, very happy. We would give ourselves very high marks for the first quarter of fiscal year 21. As you said, the consumer sales tax, we collected $351 million in consumer sales tax during the first 3 months of this fiscal year. That is an all-time record for the first quarter. There's never been that much collected in the past, and we went back and researched that thoroughly. To give you an idea how important that consumer sales tax is, the consumer sales tax provides roughly 30% of the state's general revenue, so it is one of our 2 gigantic revenue sources. The other one, of course, is the personal income tax. Personal income tax provides about 45% of our general revenue income, and we collected for the first quarter of fiscal year 21 $614 million in personal income tax. We did our research on that number, and that is also an all-time record number for West Virginia for the first quarter of the fiscal year. So on our 2 big revenue sources, consumer sales tax, personal income tax, that's about 75% of our revenue. We collected nearly $1 billion, and we set records on both of those numbers. The other number that we like to look at, and this is a number that I think is very reflective of the state's business environment and how the state's doing, the businesses are doing. We collected on corporate net income tax. The net income tax, of course, that our corporations pay, we collected $106 million in the first quarter of fiscal year 21, and that is a $43.3 million above our estimate. So we were very, very pleased with that number, and that also is very consistent with the personal income tax and the consumer sales tax. Our cash flow number, we did a look back. Our balance yesterday on September 30th of 2020 was right at $298 million. And we did a look back to see, number one, what do we have in cash a year ago? A year ago, September 30th, 2019, we had $120 million. So we have $178 million more cash than we did 1 year ago. And we looked back to see what was the balance on that date in prior years. The last time the state had a balance of cash above $298 million on the date indicated, September 30th, was in 2009. And if you recall, that was when we were in the midst of a tremendous influx of severance tax revenue, and those numbers were very good. But this number is just out of this world good, and we're very pleased with it. The other thing that I think needs to be mentioned, and this is as objective as you can get. In August, the revenue team, presented the state's financial picture to, as we do every year in August, to Wall Street. And we are rated every year by Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. And that very much affects our fiscal bond ratings and our interest rates on our bonds. And this week, we've already received a favorable rating from Moody's and Fitch earlier in September. They both reaffirmed our stable bond ratings and our very good bond ratings. But this week we got a lengthy report from Standard & Poor's, which was the most elaborate report we've received in a very long time, complimenting West Virginia on 2 or 3 major points, and I'll read those for you. The budgetary performance of West Virginia positions our state well for near-term fiscal pressures. And what they're saying in Wall Street terms is we have done a very good job managing our budget through these difficult times that we've had in the last 6 months. And as a result, West Virginia is in good shape to anticipate any fiscal pressure that might come as we continue to navigate through this pandemic. Another point made by the S&P Group was that West Virginia's financial management policies remain good. And they were very complimentary, Governor, of the financial management that we have had in place here over the last few years. And they don't just look at 2020, they look at 2019, and they look forward to 2021, and they look all the way back to 2018 and 2017. So they're very complimentary of our general fiscal management. And of course, this is a compliment to West Virginians in general. Our framework of our government here in West Virginia allows us, through the governor's office, to make expenditure and revenue adjustments as necessary. And of course, our governor, we've met many, many times since April 1st when the pandemic first hit late March, and we certainly have had the ability to make the adjustments that we need to make, allowing us to finish fiscal year 2020 with a $28 million surplus. So when you see that you're getting this type of grade card from Wall Street, this is not one critic or somebody who supports us or doesn't support us or somebody who has no expertise in this subject. This is Standard & Poor's who's making these compliments about how West Virginia's financial picture looks and how we as a team under the leadership of the governor are managing the state's finances. So we couldn't be happier in the Department of Revenue about the situation with the state's finances today. I know way back in late March, Governor, when we started meeting with you almost every single day, we were trying to visualize all the way out to this day, October 1st, and what the first year of fiscal year 21 might look like. And we certainly did a lot of fiscal chess and a lot of planning under your direction, and I'm very pleased to report to the people of West Virginia that the state's finances are in excellent condition today. And with that, Governor, I'll yield.
Okay, I don't know how much what I could add to that. I couldn't be more pleased. I mean, that's all there is to it, and I'll just run through it as quickly as I can. But just imagine a state that is going through the COVID situation, which is a cannonball to any state's stomach. And we're reporting to you that we have an all-time record sales tax collection for the first quarter. We have an all-time record personal income tax, collection in the first quarter. We have great news on corporate income tax as well. We have a cash surplus of $297.8 million, and our severance tax really and truly has now become, while we're very hopeful that we can have more and more and more mining jobs and more gas opportunities, from the standpoint of building our pipelines or downstream petrochemical stuff and all kinds of gas opportunities that are right there at our fingertips. The real truth is just this, from the standpoint of severance, as that being the very thing that propelled this state forward, in the past, it was the only thing we had. Now we have moved more and more to a diversified economy. Tourism is booming like crazy. Our state park renovations and everything, where state parks are booked to the max all over the place and everything. There is so many things from high tech to higher ed to on and on and on. We're not going to forget our miners. We're not going to forget the gas industry. But truly today, We are a much more diversified economy, and this state is rocking. That's just all there is to it. And so the thing that tickles me the very, very most is one thing and one thing alone, and that is we're not becoming the diamond in the rough that everybody is slowly finding and everybody's discovering. Now we are the diamond in the rough that they missed, and they know it. And so many accolades are coming our way, and you West Virginians deserve all the credit. For crying out loud, you have always been the people with the most beautiful seasons, the people that have all the natural resources, whether it be coal, oil, gas, water, timber. I mean, all of those incredible resources that we have and many more. You have always been the people that have been located within 600 miles of 2/3 of the population of the country. And you have always been the craftsmen, the faith-based people, the people that are low crime, the people that know the difference between right and wrong. You have always been the treasure, really and truly. You just needed somebody to really convince not only you how great we are, but absolutely convince the world how great we are. And it's happening. It's happening right now in West Virginia. So nothing could make me more happy and everything. Really, really proud to be a part of you. And I love West Virginia more than good sense, and I love its people more than good sense. But, I'm very, very proud of that. But nevertheless, I thank you, Secretary Hardy, and I thank all the people that made all this become, a reality in lots of ways. We still got lots and lots of people that are out there that are hurting, and we want to flip every rock and make sure that we touch every single person, and we're going to stay at it until we get it done. So anybody that's out there that's still struggling, I know we got a bunch of them, that are out there that are still struggling. We're coming to your rescue, and we're going to keep trying every way we possibly can to help.
All right, thank you, Governor. We'll now go to questions from members of the media. The first today from Steve Adams with Ogden Newspapers.
Yeah, Steve Adams of Ogden Newspapers here. Obviously good numbers here. How much of this, particularly in regards to consumer sales, is due to COVID? And what I mean by that specifically is obviously people, families, businesses. Everyone's buying PPE, buying additional equipment, obviously, for what they need to try to keep people safe, socially distanced, things of that nature. So how much is that type of spending driving what we're seeing in the numbers, particularly consumer sales tax? Thank you.
Okay. Stephen, this is a really complicated answer, and it would take a long, long time. But let me just let me make a real effort to try to summarize this as best I can. It seems like on the surface that the government has pumped in a bunch of money, and therefore that stimulates your economy and everything else, and makes things go from the standpoint of the extra $600 or $400 a week, to unemployment and all that. And there is some truth and some appreciation that we have had with that. But just think about this just for a second. We never shut down the essential businesses within this state, and we kept them running and everything. And every single one of those essential businesses and everything, every dollar has a multiplier effect of another dollar and another dollar. From the standpoint of using the CARES money correctly, or using, or the dollars that are coming in for the $600 a week, and then $400 a week and everything else like that. Every one of those dollars becomes a multiplier. And the multiplier effect of those dollars, when a dollar's spent, and a dollar's spent to be able to buy something, you pay sales tax. And then all of a sudden, that dollar employs somebody, and they get a paycheck, and they go out and they buy something, and they pay sales tax again. Now, in addition to that, our small businesses took a cannonball right to the stomach, and they shut down. And lots and lots and lots of people, lost their jobs and everything else. So from the standpoint of how we handled the grants and getting out grants to small businesses and helping them there, that helps. But that's why I could go on and I could give you a whole business seminar of all the different things that we talk about all the time, and there's so many factors that influence this. But here's the bottom line that you've got to think of. You've got to think just this way. If you're a state and you take this cannonball, right to the stomach, most states naturally generated all kinds of more revenue before the cannonball. Well, we would have a whole lot rather been working before the cannonball hit, and have no cannonball. But with the cannonball, you got to manage. You got to manage all the moving parts and everything else like that. And that's what I can very, very proudly say we've done. We've managed all the moving parts with the cannonball, and we've not ended up like all the other states, that are absolutely just sitting there wondering what in the world to do and how they're going to get by. And the other thing I'd like to report to you is just this. I've told you over and over and over that I felt like there was another stimulus package coming. I don't know if they'll get it across the finish line because Washington is so blooming inept, it is unbelievable. They cannot do anything, it looks like, other than trying to throw the first, another political rock at each other. That's all they do. But if Washington will get their act together, that additional stimulus package will be coming our way too. And I hope there'll be some even more dollars that'll come our way. So Stephen, it's a complicated answer and everything. I could go on forever and a day, but that's the best I can do for right now.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next to Charles Young with WV News.
Hi, this is Charles Young with WV News. Secretary Hardy, as you said, this is the first of our 4 report cards for the year. What does this current data tell us about what the rest of the year is going to look like? Could you look out into the future a little bit and give us some predictions?
I think it's very difficult to project out completely the next quarter. I think right now we feel very cautiously optimistic and that all of our numbers are trending in the right direction and have been for months now. But I think it's impossible to determine exactly where we'll be on December 31st, other than we are pleased with where we've been, and usually the best predictor of the future is the past. So cautiously optimistic would be my answer.
All right, thank you, Charles. Next to Mark Curtis with Next Star Media.
Good morning, Governor and Cabinet. Governor, politics is going to come into this. Your opponent has said that you're sitting on the majority of the CARES Act money. He says if there is a surplus in the state, you're sitting on it when the money could be doled out and used to help people. You were talking about people not being able to pay their rents and people still unemployed. Is there any chance any of this money could be sent to them since there is a surplus and help with the continued employment problem and the troubles people are having financially?
Mark, I don't know how to answer your question other than just say this, that my opponent is a child in a man's game. And that's just all there is to it. You're talking about inexperience and lack of knowledge. Over and over and over, we've received accolade after accolade on how we've gotten stuff out and gotten stuff out fast. How we've gotten stuff out so much better than any of the other states. And from the standpoint of how we continue to do things and make 10 things happen with a one thing, in this state, and how we've continued to be able to do that, the whole nation is constantly in envy. Our great Senator Capito reported, that we were 4th in the nation on getting the CARES Act money out. And it just goes on and on and on. And I can't say more about, from the standpoint of the politics, that my opponent is so far behind in the polls that he's been lapped, and maybe they're going to Maybe they're going to string the finish line, the ribbon across the finish line and waiting for the whole pack to come across, and he may come across the finish line because he's been lapped so far and he's so far behind. But he just continues to stab at straws, and I guess that's really all he can do. But he's really these numbers and the work that's gone into this thing. I mean, this is a great big boy game, and you needed a lot of experience to be able to deal with this, and that's what we're doing, Mark. But trust me, we're getting the money out to the people in every way, shape, form, and fashion we can as fast as we possibly can.
All right, thank you, Mark. Next to Dave Benton with WCHS and Fox 11.
Good afternoon, Governor. Dave Benton with WCHS Fox 11. Quick question for you. August revenue was described by you in media reports as unbelievable. You said that, we exceeded estimates by $35.8 million in August. And today you even have better news. So my question is, how do we keep this trend going?
Well, we keep it going by this, and just think with me, and I really appreciate the conservative manner in which Secretary Hardy looked at the balance of the year, because that's what we want to do. I mean, and they'll tell you that from my standpoint, while I'm enthusiastic and stuck on, in my heart, I am always double checking and conservative in how we look at it. But just think about this just for a second. Our budget that we ended the 2020 year was based on the 2019 budget, which was a all-time record surplus year. $511 million. All-time record. And we based 2020 on that. Now, when we did that, it was 4.6 or whatever, or $4.7 billion. Now, all-time record. All right, now, and we based 2020 on that. Then we had COVID hit, and then we had the moving of our income tax dollars hit. So we had two $200 million hits, and we still found a way to run across the finish line with a $28 million surplus. Now, what does that tell us if we don't shut our engine down in West Virginia? What it tells us is West Virginia is still trending in a very, very positive manner, and we're trending that we have to watch. We have to be conservative, and we have to watch, but West Virginia is trending from a growth model in a really, really good way. Now, one of the things you have got to watch and you've got to really keep an eye on is just this. Look at the percentage of our total revenue that's severance taxes. It used to be an incredible number, but now it's probably trending at a 20 or 25 or maybe even more than that year low as far as the amount of dollars we're taking in from severance to the percentage of our total revenue. Now, what does that mean? It means we're moving into a diversified economy. What does it mean if really, truly, last night I had one of the people in my staff, Rebecca Blaine, sent me a text, actually a copy of it that was said that the president is issuing an executive order, which is exactly what I took to him 2 years ago. Exactly what I took to our president, that he is issuing an executive order that is making mining become a national security issue. Now, in doing so, he's going to try to move towards, if he were reelected and everything, he's going to try to move in every way to create additional mining possibilities within our state. In all honesty, we'd have had it done 2 years ago. But out of the clear blue sky came impeachment. And then right after that came with that came all the Russian stuff and everything else under the sun. Right after that comes COVID. Right after that comes, defund the police or whatever it may be, and with all that, my issue in regard to mining kind of got shoved to the back burner. Last night, that article or that came to me. What would happen to our state, and I don't want to dwell on it forever, but what would happen to this state that is becoming diversified and is doing as well as we're doing? What would happen to us if we truly had our pipelines in and truly the mining industry truly came back and all the other things that we want so much that, whether it be tourism or higher ed or high tech or all the manufacturing possibilities? What is the outlook for West Virginia? The outlook to me is exactly what I've wanted before I ever got here. And that is, there's goodness on the way, Bubba. I mean, that's all there is to it. There's goodness on the way to West Virginia, and it's coming. And absolutely, when the demand mongrel, and West Virginia is going to be in demand, when the demand mongrel crawls out of the house, supply can't keep up, and absolutely they're going to come, and they're going to come in droves. Absolutely, mark it down. We're on our way in West Virginia, and I can't possibly be any happier.
All right, thank you, Dave. Next to Paul Mullen with WCBC.
Good morning, Governor. Good morning, Secretary Hardy. I'm looking toward financial flexibility. You have a cash surplus of $297.8 million. How much of that is very flexible, like undesignated and unreserved? Can you go into that a little bit? How much of that money is available for you to use as you want, where you want to use it?
It's as a general statement, without having the printout, of course, in front of me, it's a surplus, and therefore it will be available to us for use as we proceed through the fiscal year. Now, the state's finances are very complex, and it's amazing how many transactions occur in one day in our accounting system, but it is available and for us to use as we see fit.
And Paul, let me jump back and say this. If you'll step back and just look at West Virginia, here's all you got. Here's the whole puzzle. First of all, we needed to put a stake in the sand to really say we're going to make education our centerpiece. Did we not? And we've surely tried to do that. And I think that's still enormously important because that's the very first thing that people ask when they come to our state in regard to moving here with their companies or whatever. The next thing we've done is we put a stake in the sand about really doing something about our highways. And we have cranked that up like crazy. Have we not? That's all there is to it. The next thing is broadband. And we've got to do something about it. That's all there is to it. And we got a plan we're working right now. And absolutely, we're on the way to cover this state from the standpoint of broadband. And it will be enormously beneficial because we have to have that as a state. And then lastly, and I've not said this to anyone here, but as we move forward, if I'm at the helm, and I don't say this from the standpoint of any political gobbledygook at all, because I don't want to pay any attention to that. But do you know what, and this is coming from me today, do you know what we need to do more than anything as we move forward with this state is we need to get on a glide path to eliminate our state income tax. Now, if we can do that as we go forward in this state, and if there's a way to move forward to be able to do that, without any question, West Virginia would be covered up with opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. So with all that being said, I just think the options are limitless, and we want to keep on going with the options.
All right, thank you, Paul. Next to Phil Kabler with the Charleston Gazette-Mail.
Hello, everyone. as the governor says, a certain portion of the economic upturn is related to the infusion of CARES Act funds into the state. Can we quantify, and it looks like we've gotten over $3 billion since April in CARES Act funding of various types. Can we quantify what impact that's having on the numbers we're seeing right now?
First of all, I don't know where we've gotten $3 billion. Is that but I do know that from our grant program we've gotten probably 1.25, and we got 1.25 in the CARES money, and which is an awful lot of money and everything. There's still so much money, Phil, that has not gone out, that we're still shipping out to the cities and the counties and all that kind of stuff. And it would be frivolous to not think that that's not been a really positive impact toward us and everything. But you've got to understand, the only reason that money's here is because businesses and individuals lost their jobs and businesses were shut down, and so something had to replace that vacuum. And I don't think any of us can quite quantify it.
Right.
Maybe Secretary Hardy, you can
Phil,
quantify it better than I. But
Phil, if you remember, you asked me a very similar question last month, and there's two things to think about. One's a $1.25 billion CARE Act grant, the general fund, and then there's what we call the bucket grants, which are the grants that were formula driven, that were designated to go out to, for example, education, higher education, healthcare providers. Remember, those grants were targeted for those industries because those industries were having and are having so much economic hardship. So as the governor points out, it's not just free money rolling in the state, it's compensation, and intended to be compensation, for much of the economic damage that's being caused and has been caused by the pandemic, particularly in the healthcare industries and physicians, providers, and for small business. So that's a very, very complex model that we're talking about here. When you talk about, I think it's $2.9 billion if you add it all up, if you add all the bucket grants and the general relief fund. So that's very complex, and it would probably take decades to try to model out exactly to the penny what effect that has on the collection numbers that we see here today. But remember the underlying premise. They're here because of economic damage to begin with.
All right, thank you, Phil. Last question today comes from David Beard with the Dominion Post.
Hi. I'd like to pursue the severance tax issue just a little more. Wonder if we have the numbers for what severance taxes were for the quarter, how that compared to a year ago, and if the numbers give you any sense of how COVID affected coal and especially natural gas production. Thanks.
David, I've got the numbers right here. I think this is correct, but David, the total severance tax collections were at $18.6 million, and the first quarter, I guess that's for the month, and the first quarter collections totaled $22.6 million. Collections for the first quarter of the year were $5.8 million above estimate. But estimate is based on a really low estimate number. And is that correct, Dave? Did I do that right?
Yes,
and everything?
You're correct.
But the first quarter collections were at $22.6 million. To give you a comparison, the first quarter consumer sales tax collections were $351 million. So our severance is surely down, and down bad. But nevertheless, I'm really hopeful that it's going to rise, because I love the fact when we've got our coal miners working and we've got our gas workers working as well. So but it's not good.
All right, thank you, David. Governor, back to you.
Well, let me say this. I congratulate everybody, because especially my team has done unbelievable work. But more than anything, I congratulate West Virginia on a great first quarter. We want to be cautiously optimistic, as our secretary has told us, and we want to really watch, because we all know, I mean, you know, watch the national news. I mean, this COVID situation is heating up in a lot of states across the country, and we're surely dealing with the difficulties of it. And you know, as we go forward, I mean, we can be cautiously optimistic, but we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I urge everyone to please follow all of our guidelines and to protect yourself, protect your loved ones. Please try to protect the elderly, and it's tough stuff, you know, and we really don't know. If there's any time in our lives that we can feel that, you know, doubt and really uncertainty about tomorrow, well, it ought to be now, you know. But in addition to that, I want to report just this. You know, there was one of our great deputies that was shot last night. He was shot twice in the chest early in the morning hours, and he survived because of the vest that he was wearing, and all the other details that I would have shouldn't be released at this time. But I would ask all West Virginians to keep this great person in your thoughts, your prayers, and everything, because, and I go back to this all the time, but it's just, you know, it's just as simple as this. Yesterday, I had the opportunity for our Gold Star families to basically dedicate, you know, 54 miles of highway, you know, that they'll be recognized for the sacrifice and all that has gone on. I was there with Woody Williams. And what an incredible day. I said it over and over, that we owe everything we have to our military. Do we not? Do we not? To our veterans, all those that have sacrificed so much. Our ability to be able to go to Wendy's, our freedom, our ability to be here today is due to all this sacrifice that all these great people have done. Now, but in addition, you know, this idea of defund the police. I mean, where in the world could anybody come up with such an idea? Now, we don't want injustice to happen to anyone, no matter of their race, their age, or anything. We don't want injustice and separation. But for crying out loud, who do we call right off the get-go when we have any level of crisis? We call our police. We call the people that are there to protect us. And for the most part, in every way, you know, sure, there's bad apples. There's bad apples in any and everything. And we need to weed those bad apples out. We need to better educate all of us, to where we don't have bad apples if we can help it. But in all honesty, they're the very people that we call first, and they do an incredible job for West Virginia. I love them with all my soul, and I thank them, and I ask you for your prayers for this individual. And again, I ask you for your prayers of that we'll go forward as a state and keep doing good stuff and doing really good stuff economically. But we got to remember all those that are out there that are still hurting, and we've got to remember to be safe and get through this pandemic as best we possibly can. But I thank you. I thank you, West Virginia, for letting me, you know, have the honor to lead you and be here with you today, because it's a great day for West Virginia. Thank you so much.